Hi, I'm Dave LeBold, Vice President of Product Strategy at Digidesign. For over 15 years, Digidesign's been an industry leader in the world of computer-based digital audio production. We provide the professional music, broadcast, multimedia, and film industries with tools for audio production, creation, collaboration, and distribution. We've worked to create innovative core technologies to revolutionize the audio profession and the art of recording. And as a result, Pro Tools is now recognized as an industry standard. We also enjoy strong ties with other leaders in the audio industry. Our development partner program is the largest and most successful in the business, with more than 100 products compatible with our systems. Since 1995, we've been a division of Avid Technology, the world leader in nonlinear digital video, paving the way for true integration of audio and video. We're committed to providing the most creative and flexible tools for audio professionals anywhere. Our philosophy: constantly strive to offer anyone working with sound all of the production tools they'll need in one integrated environment. Pro Tools gives you absolute control of the entire audio production process, start to finish. From straightforward software to world-class control surfaces, Pro Tools takes you right up to the final mix. And now we've connected to the web. With DigiProNet featuring DigiStudio, you can use the net to collaborate with anyone, anywhere in the world using Pro Tools. So what's the next step? Digidesign's HD system. Pro Tools HD, our next generation hardware, brings you an even greater degree of power and flexibility. With Pro Tools HD, your projects will benefit from pristine high-definition audio, increased track count, support for extremely large mixing configurations via the new TDM2 architecture, increased DSP power, and support for higher sample rates. In addition, there are all new audio interfaces offering state-of-the-art digital and analog I/O, along with a 48-bit mixer architecture for the utmost fidelity in a Pro Tools system. So let's take a look at the future of pro audio. Your host for the next 90 minutes is engineer and producer Charles Dye. Charles has mixed numerous hit records using Pro Tools exclusively. He and other Pro Tools users will take you through the ins and outs of this amazing system and let you see and hear for yourself why Digidesign and Pro Tools are the industry standard.
Let's get with this.
Digidesign has been the industry-leading manufacturer of digital audio workstations for over 15 years, since the beginning of digital audio workstations. Heard on more TV shows, films, and records than all of their competitors combined. With Pro Tools HD, 44.1, 48, 96, and 192K sampling rates are the standard. In this section, we'll take an in-depth look at each of the key components that comprise the Pro Tools HD system. The Pro Tools HD core system is available in 3 different configurations: Pro Tools HD1, HD2, and HD3. HD1 includes a core card. HD2 has a core card and an additional process card. And HD3 has a core card and 2 process cards. The HD core is the foundation of your Pro Tools system. And with this one card installed, you have access to 96 tracks at 44.1 and 48K, 48 tracks at 96K, and 12 tracks at 192K. By adding 1 or more HD process cards, processing capability is expanded and track counts are increased as well, giving you access to 128 tracks at 44.1 and 48K, 64 tracks at 96K, and 24 tracks at 192K. Each core and process card include 9 Motorola 100 MHz DSP chips for real-time effects processing at all sample rates. And a total of 7 HD cards can be installed in an expansion chassis. Taking a closer look at the core card, we see a number of cable connections, which include serial connections, the DigiLink audio interface connector, and the TDM flex cable connectors. The 12-foot DigiLink cable included with your core system connects from the card to your primary peripheral, either a 9.6 or 192 I/O. Note that these cables are also available in optional lengths of 25, 50, and 100 feet. Each Pro Tools core card and process card will support up to 32 channels of I/O with a single cable. Finally, The TDM flex cable connections are used to connect each of the cards in your system to each other. These cables are included with each HD2 and HD3 core and process card you purchase. Also included with each Pro Tools TDM core system is the base set of DigiRack plugins, EQs, delays, and dynamics, everything you need to get started with Pro Tools from the moment you start your first session. One of the greatest features available to you as a Pro Tools user is the palette of audio processors or plugins that will work with your Pro Tools system. To see the list of different plugins and processors that you can add to your Pro Tools HD system, check out digidevelopers.com. It's the largest and most successful developer program there is, and more than 100 top companies are offering software, hardware, and services for Pro Tools. As well, check out Pro Tools HD Configurator to build the Pro Tools HD system of your dreams. Digidesign provides you with all the elements you need to build a world-class audio production system. So wrapping up the HD core system, Digidesign continues its tradition as the leader in digital audio workstation technology. Pro Tools HD gives you high definition, high sample rate audio, greater expandability of DSP processing and track counts, more I/O options, and more TDM time slots. And all at a price unchanged from previous Pro Tools core systems. The 192IO is Digidesign's flagship audio interface for Pro Tools HD, giving you ultra-high quality A to D and D to A conversion, soft limiting circuitry on input, real-time sample rate conversion via the digital inputs, and almost 70 input and output connection options when utilizing the optional card bay. So let's take a look at it. Over here we've got the sample rate indicators from 44.1 all the way up to 192. And over here are sync modes. Now, internal is if we're running off the clock of the unit itself. Digital means we're locked to an external digital input. External means that we are clocking to the word clock input or the 256 times clock. And loop means this interface is slaving to or referencing clock from another Digidesign interface. When the loop master LED is on, it means that this interface has been selected as the clock master for your Pro Tools system. This is software selectable from the hardware setup menu, and any 192 or 96IO in your Pro Tools setup can be selected as the loop master. Now let's look at the meters. The 32 4-segment meters allow us to view both our 16 selected inputs and outputs simultaneously. Moving around to the back panel of the 192, we see the main I/O is arranged into 4 distinct modules: an analog input section, an analog output section, the digital I/O section, and a 4th available expansion bay. The analog input module found on the 192 includes ultra-high quality A to D converters with +4 and -10 input connections via 2 separate DB25 connectors. Each of the 8 inputs available from this card are individually selectable between +4 and -10 from the hardware setup menu. Beneath the 25-pin connectors are trim pots for each of the 16 analog input points. Also accessed from the hardware setup is Digidesign's soft clip limit feature, which you can activate on any individual input. The analog output section includes a single DB25 connector. While there is only a single connector, the output card actually includes 2 independent +4 output gain stages. These are software selectable between trim A and trim B. The digital module found on the 192 provides access to 8 AES, TDIF, and ADAT optical I/O connections. Below the digital module is an open expansion bay. You can expand the I/O of your 192 by adding an additional analog input, analog output, or digital I/O card to your interface. Moving to the right side of the rear panel, we have built-in AES and ISPDIF connectors. Also found here is another ADAT optical light pipe connection, giving you a total of 16 ADAT optical ins and outs on the 192. Any combination of the AES, SPDIF, and ADAT digital connections built into the chassis can be used in conjunction with any of the analog or digital IOs found on the analog and digital cards. 16 simultaneous inputs and outputs are available to you at any time. Continuing with the back panel, we have the BNC connectors for loop sync and external clock. As we noted earlier, loop sync is the synchronization clock used to keep all of the Pro Tools HD interfaces in your system perfectly synced with each other. Looping out from your first interface through each of the other interfaces in your system and then back to the first creates this loop. Next to loop sync, the external clock BNC connectors are used for word clock or 256 times slave clock input and output. Down towards the bottom are the primary and expansion port DigiLink interface connections. The primary port is where you connect the 192IO to your HD core or process card. A second 192 or 96 can be connected to the expansion port of your first 192, and this way, two interfaces, or up to 32 channels of simultaneous I/O, are supported from a single Pro Tools HD card. And finally, we have the legacy port. When running sessions at 44.1 and 48K, this port lets you connect up to 16 channels of Pro Tools mixed class I/O to each 192 or 96 interface in your setup. This allows you to incorporate existing Pro Tools hardware that you may already own, such as an 88824 or a 1622, directly into your Pro Tools HD system. So let's review. As the flagship interface for Pro Tools HD, the 192IO gives you ultra-high quality A to D and D to A conversion, soft limiting circuitry on input, real-time sample rate conversion via the digital inputs, and almost 70 input and output connection options. Up to 6 192IOs can be added to a Pro Tools HD system, giving you access to over 500 connection points. So that's Digidesign's 192IO, their flagship audio interface, giving you mastering level audio quality and world-class performance. The 96IO is Digidesign's high-performance, entry-level audio interface for the Pro Tools HD system, providing you with 16 channels of high-definition I/O aggressively priced. Connecting 6 of these interfaces to a Pro Tools HD system will give you a total of 96 channels of I/O hardware. With support for sample rates up to 96K, the 96IO makes it easier than ever to work with the latest standards emerging in the world of audio production. Let's take a look at the front. Here we've got our sample rate indicators, showing 44.1, 48, 88.2, and 96K. Next to this, we have our sync mode indicators. Internal sync mode means that the 96IO is referencing its own internal crystal as the clock source for your selected sample rate. Digital means it's referencing an external digital clock connected to one of the various digital inputs on the rear of the interface. External means it's referencing a clock source connected to the external clock input, either word clock or 256 times clock. And loop means this interface is slaving to or referencing clock from another Digidesign device. When the loop master LED is active, it means that this particular interface has been selected as the clock master for your Pro Tools system. Now here are 16 channels of input and output metering. You can view either the input or the output, and that's software selectable. So that's the 96IO front. Let's take a look at the back. There are 8 high-quality analog TRS inputs and outputs. These connectors support both balanced and unbalanced connections and are software switchable between +4 and -10 line levels. Over on this side, we've got AES, SPDIF, and ADAT optical, which gives you 8 channels of ADAT digital I/O. Any combination of AES, SPDIF, and ADAT digital formats can be used together with the 8 analog ins and outs for a total of 16 channels of simultaneous input and output, all from a single 96IO. Also found here are the BNC connectors for loop sync and external clock. As we mentioned on the front panel, loop sync is the synchronization clock used to keep all of your Pro Tools HD interfaces perfectly synced with each other. Looping out from the first interface through each of the other interfaces in your system and then back into the first creates this loop. Next to loop sync, the external clock BNC connections are used for word clock or 256 times slave clock input and output. Now, along the bottom are the primary and expansion port DigiLink interface connections. The primary port is where you hook up the 9.6 to your HD core or process card. A second Pro Tools HD interface can be connected directly to the expansion port of your first interface. And this way, two IOs, or up to 32 channels of simultaneous input and output, are supported from a single Pro Tools HD card. Finally, we've got the legacy port. When running sessions at 44.1 and 48K, this port lets you connect up to 16 channels of Pro Tools Mix Class I/O to each 9.6 interface in your setup. So, to wrap it up, the 9.6 I/O for Pro Tools HD gives you a cost-effective, yet high-quality 96K interface that includes 20 analog and digital connection points to choose from. Sync is the multi-purpose synchronization peripheral for your Pro Tools system, supporting all standard clock sources and timecode formats. Sync supports sample rates of up to 192K with extremely low jitter. 9-pin support has also been implemented, allowing control of remote devices as well as supporting remote control of your Pro Tools system. Let's take a closer look at how it all works. The clock reference options available with Sync I/O are found on the left side of the front panel. Your options are video reference, which is video blackburst, video in, such as a video signal from a standard VCR, LTC, digital, which can be either AES or word clock, and pilot and biphase TAC for those of you syncing to film projectors and reel-to-reel tape machines. Internal VSO means you're referencing the internal crystal of the Sync I/O. And finally, loop sync, which means you're referencing a clock source connected to one of the audio interfaces in your Pro Tools system. The Loop Master LED indicates that sync is generating the master clock of your Pro Tools system, and that all of your interfaces are perfectly synced to your selected clock reference. Sync supports sample rates from 44.1 up to 192K. Both pull up and pull down are available at all sample rates. Located in the center section is the 8-segment timecode display and timecode generator. Positional reference tells Sync I/O which connector to look to for timecode or positional information. Options are LTC, VTC, and biphase. Sync supports all standard timecode frame rates, 24, 25, 29.97, and 30, and drop frame is indicated by the LED to the lower left of the frame rates. The LED indicators for locked, speed cal, and remote give you feedback regarding communication with Pro Tools and the accuracy of your clock and positional reference. Looking at the back panel, we have the 25-pin input connector for TAC, biphase, and pilot. Video ref is where you connect video blackburst into and through the Sync I/O. The host serial adapter uses the supplied serial cable to connect sync directly to your HD core card. Video in is usually used to reference VTC positional information. However, video in also allows you to resolve the clock reference of your Sync I/O to a standard video signal, such as that from a home VCR. As well, you can use these BNCs to do a timecode window burn. From within Sync Setup menu, you can choose the window size, position, and timecode color of your window burn. Here we've got the MTC out, we've got our LTC in and out, AES. Word clock, either 1 times or 256 times clock, is selectable from the Session Setup menu in Pro Tools. Via the 9-pin connectors, 2 different devices that support Sony 9-pin protocol can be connected directly to Sync. With the optional machine control software, all control of these devices, such as locating, playing, and remote track arming, takes place directly from within the Pro Tools software. As well, Pro Tools can be placed into remote mode, allowing it to be controlled by any synchronizer that supports Sony 9-pin protocol. Finally, we have the Loop Sync in and out connections. Loop Sync is the synchronization clock used to keep all the Pro Tools HD interfaces in your system perfectly synced with each other. So there it is. That's Sync. Sync provides you with all the options you need to most accurately lock your Pro Tools systems to any source of timecoder clock. The MIDI I/O is Digidesign's MIDI interface, designed to seamlessly bring MIDI information in and out of Pro Tools. With a total of 10 MIDI inputs and outputs, this interface adds simplicity and streamlined functionality to your MIDI operations. MIDI I/O features a convenient self-powered USB connection and hardware support for Digidesign's MIDI timestamping feature that gives you look-ahead MIDI data caching, which translates to the most accurate MIDI timing you can achieve in a digital audio workstation. With support for up to 4 interfaces, it gives you a total of 40 inputs and outputs and 640 MIDI channels. So let's take a closer look. Starting on the left of the front panel, we have access to the MIDI inputs and outputs of 9 and 10, making quick gear connections simple and easy. Now, moving on over to the right, we've got the LEDs for the MIDI in and out activity. And to the far right, we've got the power and the online LEDs. And the panic reset button allows you to reset the MIDI I/O in case you get any stuck notes. Looking at the rear panel, you'll notice a very clean and simple layout of the MIDI input and output connections. On the far side, we have the USB connector, and this is how the MIDI I/O communicates with your computer and receives its power. In most cases, this is the only connection you'll need to make to your computer or your USB hub. If you already have other passive USB devices connected to your computer, you can choose to power your MIDI I/O with a standard 6 to 12 volt power supply, which connects to the power connector at the far end of the MIDI I/O's back panel. So that's MIDI I/O. It's Digidesign's streamlined, high-performance solution that unifies all of your favorite MIDI gear with Pro Tools. One of the most important aspects of a recording system, digital or analog, is to get the highest quality audio signal into the system from the start. Digidesign's Pre is a remote controllable 8-channel mic preamp designed specifically for this task, and at a cost that belies its world-class performance. The 8 discrete mic preamp circuits in Pre offer a superior, transparent signal path, while its remote controllable operation via the Pro Tools interface enables you to place your preamps anywhere in the studio, allowing you to take full advantage of the reduced cable lengths between your mics and your preamp. Let's check it out. Starting at the far right, we have the line and instrument inputs for channels 1 and 2. These two connections give you convenient front panel access to the same line and instrument inputs for channels 1 and 2 that are found on the rear of Pre. This looks like 8 meters, but in fact, it's the functions for each one of the mic pre's. We have the mute and select button for each of the 8 channels, and these work together with the channel status LEDs. Using the select button to choose a channel, you can activate any of the 5 functions to that signal path. 48 volts supplies you with phantom power individually to each channel. Insert switches send and return insert points found on the rear of Pre into the signal path. Limit activates the built-in soft clip limiter feature. This circuit helps eliminate momentary peaks or overs to your connected A to D converters and also emulates analog tape saturation. Phase reverse and a high pass filter are also activated here via their function buttons. Found in the middle of pre are the metering and source select functions. Input source options for each channel are mic, line, and instrument. Input impedance is automatically selected when the source input is selected. The high-resolution 14-segment peak meter allows you to individually view your level for each of the 8 channels. This meter is active for the currently selected channel, and you can set the peak hold to one of 3 different values: infinite, 3 seconds, or off. Next is the gain adjust and parameter select knob. The value displayed is the gain for the currently selected preamp channel. Turning the knob allows you to increase or decrease the gain in increments of 1 dB. You can also choose to view MIDI channel information here while configuring pre to be remote controlled from your Pro Tools session. When you activate the oscillator, a 1K tone at +4 dBu is generated out the oscillator output on the back of the unit. The tone is also present at the main 8 outputs. The shift function is a special modifier key for advanced operations such as grouping preamp channels. When the remote LED is on, it indicates that pre is being controlled by Pro Tools. The activity LED indicates that MIDI commands are being passed between pre and Pro Tools. Moving to the back, we see that each of the 8 inputs include XLR connectors for mic input and 1/4-inch connectors for line and instrument inputs. Below the input connectors are +4 dBu balanced send and return inserts for each channel. Activation of the insert from the front panel or remotely via Pro Tools software allows you to easily compare your clean signal with or without outboard processing, such as compressors and EQs. Directly next to the insert section is the main analog output +4 dB25 connector. All the parameters available from the front panel of pre are accessible from the control strip found in your Pro Tools mix window. By identifying the number of Digidesign pre's you have connected to your system, you gain instant access to each channel of preamp settings without having to leave the sweet spot of your mix. Furthermore, mic pre-channel assignments and parameter settings are saved globally and on a session-by-session basis, allowing quick recall of even the most complex tracking configurations. Digidesign's intent with pre is to provide you with a custom-tailored, world-class mic pre solution that works seamlessly within the Pro Tools environment. Let's talk about how Pro Tools is used as a music creation platform. Pro Tools incorporates an extensive set of MIDI-based tools and functions that allow you to get your ideas into the computer quickly without losing your spontaneous moments of creativity, so that you can keep your project in one place from start to finish. One benefit of working entirely within Pro Tools is that the MIDI functions utilize the same editing and automation tools used to edit the audio, so there's no need to learn a separate set of tools just to work with your MIDI. As well, with Pro Tools, the editing of your MIDI and audio takes place in the same window. Along with the MIDI functions, the creative possibilities you'll find within Pro Tools have become nearly limitless. Using a full range of software-based synths, samplers, and drum machines from Digidesign and their development partners, you're able to make the most efficient use of your host-based CPU processing power and the expandable power on demand, TDM. There are 3 different ways you can choose to use software instruments within the Pro Tools environment. These are Direct Connect, TDM, and HTDM. Direct Connect allows host-based applications that run in the background on your computer to communicate with Pro Tools. It allows you to route the audio from your host-based synths and samplers right into your session. TDM plugins, on the contrary, use the power of the DSP chips found on your HD process cards. You're not limited by the finite processing power of your host CPU. And lastly, there is HTDM, which stands for Host TDM. While these instruments run on the host CPU, the real difference is that they are plugins within your Pro Tools session and not applications that run in the background. One of the major benefits of working with HTDM is that the plugin settings and automation are saved with your session. All of these technologies, Direct Connect, TDM, and HTDM, can be used at the same time in the same session. And this gives you the freedom to use your processing and plugins where and when you need them. Now, here's more on music creation in Pro Tools.
Daryl, what do you have lined up here?
Well, what we have is a rhythm track section. So it's a funky little groove, and we're going to augment that track with some soft synths and some soft samplers. So first thing we want to get into is we have some acoustic piano samples loaded into Soft Sample Cell.
Oh, okay.
And that's ready to go.
That's all set up from Pro Tools.
So let's arm that track and do a pass. So then we're going to go back and augment that with a little synth solo from Native Instruments Pro 52.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I remember the drag before in the studio was, oh, let's try this synth. And you used to walk across the room or go to storage and pull it out. And it's like now we have all these vintage synths that we used to use, like the Pro 52 and all these things. We have them all in software now, and they're instantly accessible inside of Pro Tools. That's great.
We have had the chance to use Pro Tools to create a surround sound environment live. And Dave Hampton, I mean, you're the guy, you're the surround engineer, you're the guy that did it, so maybe you can tell them.
Yeah, we basically started repurposing a lot of mixes that Herbie was doing from This Is the Drum album in particular, because that album is a stereo album, but sonically that album had so many things happening that were beyond where recording was at that time, and you can hear it when you listen to that album.
We initially conceived that record from the beginning to be surround.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was composed that way, conceived and composed that way.
Yeah, and
we're a little early, I think.
Yeah. we took a lot of those tunes and rehearsed without a surround system for like 2 days. And then Herbie said, no, we need to turn it all on. And I'm always the safe one. He's always the work without a net one. So what we did is brought everything down, set it up, and fired it up, and just started going, started assigning different things. And just even the layout and relationship of where everything was laid out, we worked out in rehearsal. So things were ergonomically okay to get to, easy to work with, because the fact I had 2 joysticks over here, I had 8 sources of activity. I had some sources that I used where I did use the link button, where I could go here and say, okay, I want to move 2 channels at one time, be it 2 stereo channels or be it 2 different events. There were some things where I had to go here and move DJ disc, and right after I did that, I had to go into a solo and just do a lot of things that I couldn't have done on a normal console.
Composers that haven't really been thinking beyond stereo, they can start thinking about how to compose pieces where elements of those pieces can be used in a surround environment, and it can shape their compositional perspective, you know, so that music will actually change as a result. I mean, it's a whole new world now, you know, as it should be.
Pro Tools is ever evolving, and one of the very coolest things that is now available within Pro Tools is this function called Beat Detective. Beat Detective, among other things, can help identify and create a tempo map for any data that you enter into the computer here. Here is a pretty basic, simple loop. Okay, so what I did was I took that loop and I repeated it and I put in markers and I created a song map. And here is a funky little cool loop right here. And I'm going to solo it and listen to it. It's called Indian Crush. But it's completely out of time to this loop here. With Beat Detective, I can take this loop here and make it work within the timing of this one here. And here's how you do it. Highlight the section, open up Beat Detective, capture the selection, then I hit Analyze. And then you go to Region Separation, and what it does is it's analyzing where all those hits are, and it's going to cut right on those hits. So now we have, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, now we have a section here that's cut on various elements of the groove, kick, snare, whatever it's identifying. And then I'm going to conform this. Now what conforming will do is take those pieces and snap them to the time frame, and you hit conform. Now here is that whole selection. But one thing I can also do at this point is crossfade everything and smooth out the editing. And I do that by highlighting it and then going to Edit Smooth, Boof. If I jump up very closely, this is the one region, this is the next region. By smoothing it, it puts its crossfade right here at a 5 millisecond crossfade. And you can change the crossfade to anything you want. So then when I zoom back out, I've got this groovy little number. It sounds like this. Okay, now, it's a lot of little pieces and it might be hard to manipulate. So another thing that I'm going to do is highlight this whole piece here and use this command called Consolidate Selection. And what that does is it takes all of the regions that are highlighted and it makes one region out of them. That's an invaluable tool that I use constantly because you can edit stuff up and you can have a sound file that's got hundreds and hundreds of little edits. With the consolidation, it takes all of these little edits from one track and makes one nice, cozy region out of it. And this is what it sounds like with the other loop. Pretty cool, eh? Now that I have a tempo map, I can create a MIDI track. This is a MIDI track that was created using an internal plugin called Battery, and it's just a drum groove. So now I have another loop that fits exactly with the tempo map of what's going on here. And that's going to sound like this. Okay. Okay, so here I am. I've got my track laid out. And what's a song without a guitar solo, right? I am a poser from the 80s, you know. Okay, so I designed this guitar sound using all this input technology and a nice little grungy tone. And I'm just going to wing it, man, because that's what you do. Okay, that was one take, and if I don't like that take, I have the option of using a hidden track. You can create an endless amount of playlists, so you can continue to do take after take after take, so you don't have to lose anything that you did before, and then you can edit between the playlists to compile a comp. And as a matter of fact, if you've done this before analog, making comps, and you try it within Pro Tools, you'll never go back. So here's another take.
Comping is this attempt to bring in different performances, sometimes from different days, that the sum total will be better than any one of them. In the old days of comping vocals, everyone would sit around who had anything to do with this, say the producer and the singer, and if there was someone else in the band who was close to it, and the engineer, and you'd have this grid of, you'd have all of the lyrics, and then you'd have the track numbers, and you'd like write over the words, oh, I like this track here, and then you'd try and punch it to see how that one worked, and they go, no, I'll try it, I'll do it this way. I like 4, 3, 6, but with Pro Tools it's sort of more organic because you can zero in on a very small part or on a very big part. I like to comp vocals where I have every track visible and I'm muting them, and by using mute freeze voice it can switch between the different tracks to go to which one you want to have, and as you put together the phrase that you like, then you bring it up and that's your comp vocal. Once you've created the combination of the vocals, some people will at that point go in and do volume rise. After that, I think that the most important thing now is to make sure that it's in tune. And the plugin that I've been using the most is called Auto-Tune, which allows you to adjust pitch and to fix singers, but also instruments who have had great performances, but there's just some part of their performance where the pitch is drifted off a little sharp or flat. There's a number of ways to use it. Automatic mode is set with the retune and the tracking, which just tells you how much is Auto-Tune going to grab a note and try and change it. The default, though, is a good place to start. If you want to be more careful about it, there's a graphical mode. In the graphical mode, you start by taking a sample and you track the pitch. Now you have these phrases that, as we can see, you can see the kind of the graphical view of what this young woman sang. As you can see, this is really an E, but she's moving up and down, which is really her vibrato. So what I usually like to do is what's called make curve. What make curve does is it draws a line that mimics this section. Then you can go into the arrow, and if you hold down Control and Option, you won't slide left or right. And you're able to take this whole little section and slide it up and center it on E. And that is really where you think she went. She wanted to go hit an E, and she has vibrato. Now we've kept all of the characteristics of when she decided to have the vibrato go up and down, but we've created the tonal reference, rather than being a little bit flat or just drifting a little flat, is now centered. Now in this case she did not drift flat, but if she had drifted flat and you didn't like that, you can also come in and just grab the end rather than the whole section and then pull the whole thing so it's going up or down. So that is a way to correct someone who has a tendency to just sort of fall off of a note and you want to keep them on the note.
While Pro Tools is used in all aspects of audio production, there's one area where it really sets the standard, and that's music production. Why? Because there are many features of Pro Tools in terms of editing, mixing, and creating for music that are unique. And that's why Pro Tools has been used on more Grammy-winning albums and songs than all other workstations combined. In fact, Digidesign was awarded a technical Grammy in 2001, to quote the Recording Academy, for breaking the boundaries of digital recording and revolutionizing the way music is produced. Using Pro Tools for music production gives you the flexibility of working at a number of different sample rates, from 44.1, 48, to 96, and all the way up to 192. Plus, the ability to deliver your mixes in formats like AC3 and DTS. We'll discuss Pro Tools mixing capabilities, what I like to call working in an integrated mixing environment, where all the tools you need for mixing are right there in front of you, and your only limitation is simply your imagination.
Pro Tools, a digital audio workstation is definitely here to stay, and probably the system of tomorrow. I think analog recording, to a certain extent, is over. The power in Pro Tools just beats everything. I don't even know how to say it other than that I just can't see how making records any other way. I've made at least 30 plus records solely on Pro Tools and have been happy with every one of them. All of my mixing now I've done only in Pro Tools. Occasionally I will, for the clients, leave certain elements on tape, but I always transfer everything into Pro Tools and mix within Pro Tools. Certain things I'll even pre-mix in Pro Tools because there's a resolution that I get out of that. For example, like a big keyboard stack, instead of using 30 channels of the desk, I'll just work within Pro Tools and pre-mix them and bring them up on 2, maybe 4 channels on the desk. I definitely love all the automation controls that I have over my plugins, which, it's just, there's very few consoles that have full automation and sound good at the same time. So I prefer using especially reverb effects, the Lexi Verb and so on. I can do all kinds of wonderful automation work. To me, there's something about no rewind time, a lot of aspects of the nonlinear aspect of it that just is much more expedient. And also to be able to loop a section over and over until I get the balance the way I want it is a very big plus in mixing for me.
I like using Pro Tools in a lot of different ways. It's become a complete replacement for me for what most people would call a traditional studio. The need for multiple tape machines, the need for various types of consoles, it's all pretty much gone away now because with Pro Tools I can make a virtual console any way I want it. But also the ability to do edits and to do very creative things in edits that would be virtually impossible with tape. For example, if you're working in hip hop or any kind of R&B medium, sometimes one of the more popular effects is like a stutter or a sample re-triggering effect. Now, that's easy to do when you're pushing a button on a drum machine, but sometimes when you're working with multiple tracks like this, you don't have that ability. For example, you can take a region and maybe take 2 beats of a bar, and you might want to duplicate that region. Pro Tools also has a shuffle mode in editing. So let's say I duplicated this region. When I'm using shuffle mode, what's going to happen is when it duplicates it, it's going to move the existing audio over to the right. So I might duplicate this a couple of times. Now what I've done is I've made a new intro for the song that wasn't there previously. This is a great way to change arrangements after they've already been recorded. Sometimes the record company might want a new intro on an existing track, but you can't get the musicians because they've already left. So you can create new arrangements of an existing song just by doing some edits. Another thing that's always been very handy is the ability to take sounds and do effects to them. For instance, you might like the effect of this crash cymbal. In fact, you might want the crash cymbal to lead the song. Maybe what we should try doing is reversing it. So let's make a copy of that crash cymbal because we want it to come in before the downbeat of the song. By bringing up reverse, we can highlight the section of audio that we want to reverse and simply process it. What it then does is it makes a reverse symbol out of one that was already there. Now what we can do is get rid of some of this audio that comes before it so that our audio can actually start the song now with a reverse symbol leading into the downbeat. And finally, we can take out 2 more beats that I've decided just now that we don't need anymore. And there's our final edit of the new remix of our song. The best part about all of this is I haven't had to edit any tape. My original performance is still on the hard drive. I can undo all of these things, but I've also been able to try something creative using just the plugins that come with Pro Tools. And in fact, I haven't used any TDM plugins yet. Everything I've done so far has been strictly with Audio Suite. Audio Suite's a great way to get a lot more productivity out of your system and save the TDM functions and the TDM power for other things such as reverbs or things you might want to manipulate in real time. Audio Suite's a great time saver, and everyone should use it on their systems. You'll be surprised how many uses you'll find for it. Some of these tracks on this session have been deactivated. They've been made inactive. And that can be a very handy thing sometimes. The nice thing about this feature is it can preserve the plugin information without actually invoking instances of those plugins. That way, if someone sends a session to you and you need to do some work on it, you might want to deactivate some of those tracks. You might want to make them inactive because you might not have any plans on working with the tracks, but you don't want to lose the fact that the tracks were there, and you don't want to lose any of the plugin information that was associated with those tracks. By deactivating them, you save the information so that later on they can be reactivated with all the plugin information intact.
One of the things that for me has turned out to be a strength of working in Pro Tools is the choices that I have for saturation. Let me give you a good example of how I use different plugins to give me this analog sound, the saturation, because there's a lot of different kinds. What we have is a kick and a snare drum. I've got 4 plugins on the kick drum. I have Dewey's DAD valve, and in this order as well, a Renaissance compressor, Renaissance EQ, and lastly, I'm going to analog tape with the McDSP analog tape emulation, AC2. Then on the snare drum, I'm also going through Dewey's DAD valve, which is their tube saturation emulator. Again, on the same compressor, and then Bomb Factory's Pultec for my EQ on the snare. And lastly, I'm going to tape, but this is Dewey's tape, the DAD tape, which has a different sound, and that's the reason why I like using each of these. Anyway, here are our kick and our snare with no processing whatsoever. Now, the thing is, they actually sound really good, but they sound a little on the clean side, and they lack personality, edge, punch. The most dramatic comparison is none of the plugins on the snare drum, and then just put them all in and hear it again. And you can really hear the saturated sound. So when you're done, just put on a little bit of reverb. Here's what you got. So it's a lot warmer, it's a lot punchier. There's so many options for tube saturation here, or tube saturation over here, or the 2 different tape saturations, compression, the different EQ options. It's really, the number of choices for me is great and it's powerful, and I can always find that different timbre that I'm looking for. That's why I love using plugins.
I've done a lot of mastering for a lot of different projects in Pro Tools. It is a great tool. One of the things that I like best about it is that when I start a project, we're sort of discussing, should it have more bass, should it be compressed a lot, and these kinds of things. And so I often copy the song in maybe 2 or 3 different tracks and set up what I think sounds the way I would like it. Then I have a conversation with the artist, we change a little bit, but don't change mine, I change theirs. Then I can readily compare the 2 mixes back and forth, or the 2 mastering sessions. I think that when people master in Pro Tools, you have such ability to add all these fun plugins, and they don't think like that. They go, well, we'll make it tight, we'll do this. But a song's fading out and it flanges. Or I did a song for somebody and it ended and it was just abrupt, and we put a slap on it so it goes dow, ta tow, 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 tow. And it makes it a lot more fun than just going bink. By creating this big animal, you create a sound for your client, and that's really what the fun of mastering for me is. Not just nicking a little bottom end out, but creating something. When I was in the analog situation, all you can do is pull up an EQ, pull up this, they say yes, they say no, you make one and you're done. You can't make a copy and offset it. You can't change your mind 5 seconds later and go back. I could save EQ after EQ after EQ and pull them up and exchange them in a matter of minutes. There's no other tool that lets you do this. This is a mastering's best friend.
Over the last 10 years, Hollywood has undergone a monumental change from the traditional flatbed way of editing film to an almost exclusive use of digital nonlinear editors. The majority of all films that come out of Hollywood are edited on the Avid Media Composer or Film Composer. And the same holds true for Pro Tools, as it has become the audio standard for film post. The seamless two-way transfer of audio and picture between Avid and Pro Tools makes for a working environment that is unsurpassed in terms of efficiency and ease of use. In this section, we'll see some of the features that make Pro Tools stand out as the obvious choice when working on audio for film.
One great tool that Pro Tools allows us to use in ADR replacement is a tool in Audio Suite called Vocaline. We can select an area that we find that needs to be replaced, and we'll look at the video.
If you work with dialogue, you'll find options.
We'll replace that area right there. We'll start by putting a splice at the head and the tail of the area that we want to highlight. Playing it again.
If you work with dialogue,
now record the new piece.
If you work with dialogue,
so then we highlight the guide track, capture it into Vocaline, highlight the dub track, capture that also in Vocaline, and process the dubbed track. And listen to what we have.
if you work with dialogue,
completely in sync with the original guide.
if you work with dialogue,
In fact, let's mute his and listen to the new track that's been recorded. If you work with dialogue, and it matches. If you work with dialogue, it fits into his mouth.
I really like Pro Tools for film and for any sort of post-production work because it's really intuitive. It's really easy to teach someone how to use it. And basically, you say, here's what you think you want to do, which is take a sound and make it match to a picture. And it's very easy to teach them how to accomplish that task. And of course, that's just the beginning, because then you can take those sounds and you can use Pro Tools to layer them in all sorts of ways. You can use Pro Tools to use Audio Suite plugins to change them in all sorts of ways. You can reverse them, you can pitch shift them, and you can do anything you want, basically, with these sounds and layer all sorts of effects together. And then you get into sound design and you get into using unusual things to make something you would never think of, using slow down animals to make backgrounds for underwater stuff, or using underwater animals like whales and stuff to use great backgrounds for dream sequences where people are drowning. You know, it's very subtle things that you could never think of doing before you had Pro Tools. It's very flexible to do all that stuff. One of the things I really like now is that these kind of one-stroke keys, and I don't even use all of them, but the ones I use all the time. And it includes like switching between the different modes, because a lot of times I cut in grid mode so that when I have to change stuff later, I don't end up cutting off little bits or having funny little pieces left behind. But a lot of times when you want to line something up precisely, you have to slip into slip mode or even spot mode for different things. So this is great just to flip between that and also between the tools, because I'm always going between the grabber and the other tools. And I love the crossfades and all the fades that I can just like line up my, this here and just say fade out. Ooh, and then I can set all these, and the preferences are really great. I work for 10 or 12 hours a day doing the same thing all day long. So by the end of the day, my arms are very thankful that I'm switching between different modes of working and different ways to, achieve the same tasks. This is a great spotting tool for cutting with the picture, because you can just start where you think about where it's going to be and say, okay, here's this coin roll. And land right there, and then go look for a coin roll. And there's the beginning of the coin roll right where we stopped the picture. You don't have to think about the footages or find the time code and type it all in, because you can just pop it in where you're parked.
In film, sound, you're presented with the dialogue recordings from the location, and they are imperfect. So we try our best to clean out imperfections in the track. I wanted to show how you can really get in very close with Pro Tools to see and hear what the problems are, and then find a solution to making the problem go away. So I recorded myself saying, dialogue editing in Pro Tools can be easy. Okay, so there's a big glitch on the P, like a plosive. It's actually the worst plosive I've ever heard. And then I recorded this, which is a better version. Doing dialogue editing in Pro Tools can be easy. But it's a different performance. It doesn't have the energy of the first one. So we can't use it, but it has a good P from the word Pro Tools. So we can move it over here. This track is in sync with the picture, let's say. So we're going to use that as our guide, and we're going to fix it. So the first thing I want to do is find the problem very carefully. So I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see it. So, I mean, you can cut it out. So let's find the P over here. See if I can steal it. That's probably it right there. So I've just copied what I think is the P. Let's check. Yep, that's the P. So let's go find where it was here. And let's go back and just paste it into the hole. So 1 frame long bit from another take, and let's see what that sounds like. Dialogue editing in Pro Tools can be easy. So that's pretty good. That would be very difficult to do in some other systems. I have to say, I worked on a system that couldn't allow you to make edits closer than 2 frames apart. And that was incredibly frustrating after working on Pro Tools, which you can make clips as short as 4 samples or something. I think part of the reason Pro Tools has been adopted is because it is intuitive and fun to work with.
While Pro Tools is ideal for all types of audio post-production work, there are many features that make it specifically useful for television post. Features like region replace allow you to change a sound and intelligently replace it elsewhere in the session. Loop fill and time compress and expand while trimming speed up the process of laying down ambient effects in room tone with sample accuracy to picture. The ability to have multiple video clips on your video track make it easy to audition different versions of your program material, such as approvals for promo spots and commercials. We'll talk about the ability to do simultaneous multi-format mixing and look at how Pro Tools implements multi-channel audio tracks, surround mixing, and panning. If you're someone who works in television post, speed is the key. Features like the ones we're about to see are what sets Pro Tools apart from every other workstation out there.
On a typical show, we begin with the OMF. We translate the OMF into a Pro Tools session. The Pro Tools session then moves to the dialogue editorial, to the effects editorial, to the music editorial. Most often there's things that come in later on OMF from the editors. They're adding more elements, they're changing elements. Things also come in from the Foley stage. The narration comes in on Pro Tools. And at the end, this is all put together and comes to the mix stage. And at that point, we have an editor that sits at the mix stage and does whatever last-minute touch-ups, fixes he needs to do in Pro Tools. The console is more of a router these days than it is an actual mixer, because the only automation we also have is the automation that's in Pro Tools. So it's very much the centerpiece of the system. If you have AV option, it allows you to take the picture that comes with the audio from the media composer and open it without having to redigitize it or to think about it any further. It's simply there with the session. When you open your session, you have all of your audio tracks. You also have the video, just as the editors left it. Another common thing is the necessity of having to record video from Digibeta, Beta SP, and record that in. It doesn't always come in on the OMF. The AV option has the ability to do that. It can do that in pieces. You don't have to record the entire track again. It has the compression ratios so that you can select the size of compression, the amount of drive space that you want to use, which is very important. It's very, very nicely integrated. As you drag the cursor across the screen, it scrolls a frame at a time, depending on how fast you drag it. If you're doing a fade out, if the dialogue is finished and you're coming up on black, you can actually just take and fade to black visually, watch the video scroll across as you do it, and there's no need to mark an in anymore or mark an out. You can just see it happen. The same thing if you're trimming a piece of dialogue. It's just very slick. Honestly, I can't imagine how we'd even do this anymore without it. I had to go back to tape a few weeks ago, and I really wondered, how did we ever do that? Digitranslator is an important tool to us. It allows us to sort of seamlessly communicate with the avid media composers that are our teammates in these productions. Most of the media we get comes from media composers. I think they're pervasive in Los Angeles, and pretty much everything we get comes in on an OMF. It allows us to take and open the OMF and turn it into a Pro Tools session. And it does it quickly, it does it seamlessly. It's a simple tool that does exactly what it's intended to do. In our studio, the Pro Tools is our surround mixing system. The surround panners that are on every channel are really nice. They have every feature you'd expect to find in a surround panner. They've got convergence, divergence, left, right, front, back. And they've got some really cool link features. You can link left and right so that they move in the same direction. You can link them so that they move opposite of each other. It's a very nice tool, and it's available on every channel. It's simply there. It's not a plug-in any longer. It's just nice. It's a good way to go. The beauty of surround in television is actually the center speaker. In surround, the dialogue stands out much better in an LCR environment than it does in a straight stereo environment. And that allows you to bring up backgrounds, to use effects. That allows you to go where you couldn't typically go with television. And if you're doing a show where you want to, a lot of shows, or especially reality shows, are fairly noisy shows. And one of the difficult parts is getting dialogue to stand clear of the other elements. But with the center speaker, it pops. It just works much, much better that way. Well, we use a lot of plugins. I mean, I use the Renaissance EQ and compression all the time. We use Vocal Align a lot. Pitch and Time is a great plugin. Love Lo-Fi, and we use Amp Farm occasionally. Deverb, I use Deverb. It's a daily one. That's a staple. And the great thing about having things like Deverb is that it used to be you'd have to dedicate 1 or 2 boxes to this. But now you can take Deverb and put it kind of as many places as you need to. It's a better world of reverb. Without Pro Tools, it's not so much that it takes longer, it's just that you can't do it as well. If you had to stop the session and digitize it in and slide it, move it to try to make it right, you'd just go, you like it? Pretty good, huh? There's not the time in television to do that kind of thing. So what it allows you to do is to finesse things to a level that you weren't able to do in the past.
As the show goes, it just starts out with a dialogue track, left and right, Matt and Trey. We don't break it up into characters or anything like that. And then it goes to 3, and then it goes to 4, and then it goes to like 8. And by that time, we've got like 6 or 7 mono effects tracks. We've got background tracks, stereo, and it really gets deep. And in order to navigate the show, if I heard a click in the music, or I said, oh, we need to cut the music, you basically could just hit Control and hit the edit groups, and only the music tracks come up on here, so you can fix that problem and then hit Control and go back to the entire thing. I use that constantly because stuff gets so deep, you can't be counting tracks and figuring out what the heck's going on. For all the South Park boys, we went with the basic Digidesign pitch shift and saved all the presets for the different kids. The boys have certain pitches, and then the girls have certain pitches.
Guys like it because they'll come in and they have a new character, but they want to change the voice a little, so they tell us to pitch it up or pitch it down, sometimes compress it, and as soon as we find the right one for them, they're like, yeah, that's what we want, and that's what the pitch shift does for us. It gives them different characters. It really does.
I've been using strip silence. For sections that are huge, first of all, we have to speed up the whole thing, and you have to cut out the characters. Like the little kids have to be sped up and the grown-up characters don't. So you can only do a little section at a time. To keep their timing is a lot easier You speed up the whole thing and then use strip silence to cut out any mic noise or mic booms, and then fix a little problem and take that whole chunk with their timing and move it over. We use the Pro Control. I'd use it a lot when I'm building sound effects or building a big, huge explosion, and I want to get the mix of a train crash or the mix of 20, 30 different things, and you can group everything together. I use it for that, and I also use it for, as we're going, we're doing mixes as we go, because we really don't have a time set aside to mix. It's like, as soon as we record the dialogue, we start mixing. You know, if we put a sound effect in there, it's mixed, you know? But it really comes down to a 3-fader mix. Get the final cut at 5 o'clock in the morning or something, you know, 3-fader mix for 4 hours, and we try to clean it up as best we can and get it on the air that same day.
Digital picture was just a blessing. It's just a blessing.
Yeah. In the old days, they used to jog it back and forth until, oh, I think that's right, now I'll play it. No, it's a little off, you know. This is like right on the first time, go to the next one.
Yeah, it's great for, you know, trying to sync something up, and you know, you can go right to the frame, see it's right on, and you know, make it work.
I've watched people work off tape machines, and I was just, back out of the room going, ah.
Pro Tools is becoming the standard in all areas of audio production, and radio is no exception. From live shows to sound effects playback and station IDs, Pro Tools meets the needs of the demanding schedules of radio production. Getting things done quickly with high impact is a major part of radio today. Waveform and sync point editing are standard in radio as they help you chop up and sort through large amounts of audio quickly and in a musical fashion. The creative possibilities are endless for the manipulation of sound. Plugins like GRM tools and Pitch and Time let you turn a recognizable music bed 180 degrees into something completely zany and different. Additionally, the ability to quickly cut and assemble tags helps you build and accent your shows faster than you ever could with carts and analog tape. Let's take a closer look.
One of the best things about Pro Tools for radio is the sound design capabilities, the same kind of sound design capabilities you get pro music producers are using, you can actually bring to your own radio sweepers. One of the best plugins that I'm really enjoying using lately is GRM tools, and there's a whole suite of plugins. They're all delay-based or filter-based, and they combine them in a way that really makes some interesting options available to you. So here's a standard voice track that I would have in here without the plugin.
In a stream.
It kind of had this, plain effect. You really needed to have some kind of EQ in there. So rather than just playing a regular filter in there, I decided to do something a little more dynamic and kind of create a morphing effect over time. With this plugin, what it lets me do is actually automate a filter that's going to move across the band frequency all by itself. So you kind of get an effect which you can actually draw right on the waveform itself, like this here. So even if I didn't like a specific part of it, maybe it was too bassy here, I can bring that back up. And you can see how it reacts. That kind of flexibility was impossible just a few years ago. I mean, imagine trying to sit around, you're mixing on a board with faders, and then you're switching over here to hit your gear and trying to turn knobs to make an effect work, and then the boss comes and says, you know that phrase? Well, we need to add a sponsor. It's impossible. So with stuff like this, you can create stuff that just a few years ago would have taken you all day, literally, just to get it down once. Here's a constant trick in radio is the stutter or the repeat. And here's an example of an affected voice track that was pre-affected in Audio Suite before I stuttered it. But you can see I basically started it out. And one of the problems anytime you repeat audio like that is sometimes you get little clicks in between the edits. Just stick a little fade in there, and that click is gone. See right here, there's going to be a click there. Boom, gone. That's a crossfade between the two elements. So now automatically that sound is going to fade out and fade in. The click will be gone. It creates a really clean sound. One of the constants in radio is that nothing's ever the same. It's constantly changing, and it constantly needs to be updated and constantly needs to be fixed. And what you did 5 minutes ago and it was brilliant often needs to change because the boss says, well, now we need a new version of that. And that's no truer than when you get into creative radio production when you do sweepers. A lot of times you'll work 20 minutes or something on a sweeper, you'll finish it, you'll play it for the boss and be great, and then 3 days later he'll come back and say, Now we need a weekend version. We need a version that says, we're your weekend radio station. I loved it. Keep it exactly the way it is. Just change that one word. Well, a lot of times you can go in and change the word, but what if you need to change it for the day of the week? You need to do 7 different versions. What if you need to do a version for 20 different clients? With track playlists in Pro Tools, it's really easy to keep track of this stuff. Instead of erasing old data and losing it, you can keep all 20 versions stacked on top of each other without changing or destroying any of them. And that's done by just simply creating a new track playlist. So here's our original version. Now the boss says, well, he wants it to say your weekend radio station in the very beginning. So instead of creating a new one right on top of this and destroying this one, I'll just create a new track playlist, and boom, there's my weekend radio station announcement. And if I needed to do one for Wednesday, I would just create a new playlist just by doing new. Bam, I would just type in a name there, and it would create a brand new one. I could stack that one on top of that one, however many versions we needed to do. And they're all right there. They're all easily accessible, so I can scroll through them, go back to my original one, go to the one that was for Tuesday or whatever, and go for the one that's for Sunday. It's very easy to keep track of it, and it's all non-destructive, and it's all compact in one spot. One of my favorite audio suite plugins also is like the Verify, the Defy, Rectify series. These are like totally just to destroy sound. You just take a normal sounding piece of audio, and all of a sudden you're taking all the low out of it. You're adding in some 8-bit hiss and crunch, and these are effects that you just can't create just by trying to do it with a reel-to-reel machine or a cart deck. And those kind of effects were impossible years ago, and now they're just right at your fingertips. So easy to create.
One of the fastest growing markets in audio production is the video game industry. This next generation of games require a high level of audio sophistication that incorporate a diverse combination of music and sound design elements. We'll find many features within Pro Tools that will make it easier for you to manage the daily process of sculpting audio for games.
Often in gaming, we're under a time pressure to get a huge amount of content packed into a game, and Pro Tools makes life so much easier in that regard in terms of its reliability and the extensive automation features, the batch processes that are there, the plugins for processing. I can do all of this in one app. It's a great time saver. One thing that's really great about working in Pro Tools is that I can quickly repurpose my content for other platforms. Often our audio has to be sample rate converted or format has to be changed, and I can do that all right from within Pro Tools very quickly and very simply by simply selecting the file that I wish to convert, clicking on the audio menu. I'm going to choose Export Selected as Files here, and I get a dialog box that allows me to choose different file formats and sample rates, all very quickly and very simply right from within the application itself. One of the absolutely crucial tools for the kind of work that I do is the L1 Ultra Maximizer, which is a look-ahead peak limiter that practically every piece of in-game audio content that I produce is probably going to go through this thing at one point or another, because it's going to get sample rate converted or bit depth reduced down the road somewhere. So that's a crucial piece of software for me. Another essential software plugin, TDM plugin for me, is the Dolby Surround encoder and decoder, which, with all of the platforms now having some sort of surround implementation possible on them, all the games that we have in development are being produced in surround of one sort or another. And therefore having an encoder and decoder that I can monitor my surround encoded content right out of Pro Tools is a big time saver for me. Another tool that I use quite frequently is the Pure Pitch plugin. We've just finished up a very large project with a lot of voiceover. We had the big boomy voice of the Jolly Green Giant, and even though he had a very deep, rich baritone voice, we still wanted a bigger sounding voice, and we processed his voice files with the Pure Pitch plugin, lowering the pitch on them a little bit, yet maintaining the big boomy baritone quality of his voice. And it was also, of course, passed through some other reverbs and EQs and effects processes as well to get the classic gauntlet voiceover, you know, Red Warrior needs food badly, that sort of thing. So those are some of the crucial tools that I use on a day-to-day basis. As the storage media for the game consoles, new game consoles, has grown, now many games are shipping on DVD, cutscenes are becoming more important in games as well. Pro Tools makes it very easy to work with movie content right from within your session. I could simply go up here and select Import Movie, for example, bring my movie right up into Pro Tools, where I can watch the flick while I'm working on my underscore, my sound effects, lining up dialogue to picture, save it out, and it goes right into the game.
Digidesign is taking audio production into the next millennium, making it easy to collaborate across the hall or across the globe. One of the many advantages to using computer-based workstations is the ability to have systems on a network. With Pro Tools, there are several network options available to you depending on the workflow of your project or studio. DigiStudio allows you to collaborate over the internet inside the Pro Tools environment, easily interchanging ideas for music and post. By recording to an internet-based drive bank, friends anywhere in the world can participate and contribute to your session. As well, at digipronet.com, you'll find an additional network of musicians, voiceover talent, sample and sound effects libraries, and lots more. For network needs that are more facility-oriented, Avid's Unity allows you to have multiple Media Composer, Film Composer, and Pro Tools systems accessing the same files simultaneously. Coupled with DigiTranslator and Transfer Manager, there's no easier way to move audio and video projects through your studio. You'll never need to move drives via SneakerNet again.
One of the great things about Digi is it just expands beyond just the workstation. With this setup called DigiProNet, you just go on the web and you can do a search for sound effects, and it's going to give you a wide variety of sound effects you can actually audition online and download. You can do them one sound at a time, so maybe you only need that one certain set of footsteps that you don't have in your library. Maybe they're on gravel, maybe they're on wood, and you don't have those because they're all on concrete or whatever. Just go search it, audition if it's a sound you want, pay for it, and it's yours. Import it right into Pro Tools to use it the way you would any other piece of audio.
We have 6 studios, and we've been able to collaborate on projects without us all being together at the same place using DigiStudio software and Pro Tools. So it means, for example, I can be working on a television show and I might need one of our other guys to lay down a guitar part or a background vocal part, and he can open up his session on the internet, lay down the parts, and have them to me in real time. And it enables us to work with all our busy schedules and not necessarily all being in the same place at the same time, but we're all able to collaborate on a project and get it done. That's the future of it for us.
One of the advantages of working in international is that we do have contact and communication with a number of different studios across the world, being able to share media back and forth between countries, not having to go through customs and shipping. It can actually be posted upon servers or FTP sites and pulled into Pro Tools sessions, opened up, played out, remixed, and put into the film. Using the Unity system in sharing media, there's ability right now to have the Avid editor cutting on the picture side, and having the Pro Tools users being able to pull in sessions, open up the media, play out the sessions, augment, change, sweeten, do any type of remixing that needs to be taken place, and post it back to the Avid editor so that they can bring that back into their sessions and play out. The idea of being able to do that without file conversion and transfer saves a great deal of time, and it becomes much more attractive to both the Avid picture user and the Pro Tool user.
When you're cutting sound effects in particular, it's great to have a shared sound effects library on a network. We put all the stuff we had on CD-ROM on a few drives. You can just navigate through there and find the sound effects you want very quickly, audition them, and bring them into Pro Tools and have them copied to the local drive and use them right away. It's a huge benefit just to have even the simplest of networks.
Okay, ready to roll?
So let's take a look at the future of pro audio. Your host for the next minute.
Hi, my name's Charles Dye. No.
We want to have Charles Dye, a world-renowned mixer. Oh, it's too much. Just do another one. World-renowned. Is Charles there? Come on, he's not world-renowned.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Come on. He's pretty good.
So, over here, we've got... I have no clue what this thing is.
World-renowned? How did I come up with that?
The show I'd been shows us all the tracks in our session. If they're highlighted, the show and stop.
Another common necessity is shit.
You know, you can just move things. You can just see where
it's transfers. This is H. We have a. What this is given way to is with my is musicians are able musicians are able to.
So, yeah.
Hold off.
A couple more points on both of these, and here.
Okay, now I'm going to add a guitar part because I am Steve Vai, right?
One of my favorites is GRM. I forget the name of it now. Sorry.
It's hard to just come in cold and play, you know?
Is that too soft for you? You guys haven't changed the script, right? I'm sorry, I've never read this.
This is actually a range of I'm freaking, sorry.
Loop fill and time compression. Everybody hungry? Helps you build and accent your shows faster than you ever could with that jet flying over our heads.
That's important to have.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
With the AV option, you have many. All right.
Okay, cut.
It's not moving.
Because sometimes you get something that looks like this, and
it's not seeing the media.
You're trying to.
I'm sorry. The peripheral port.
Why is this thing here?
Then you save the OMF, you translate the OMF, which we've already done, and you have. There it is. You have a session. I wasn't sure it was going
to. It's got hair. Okay, now I'm just going to make up a part here. I have no idea what I'm going to play, but hey, who cares? My music doesn't get played on the radio anyway. Unable to allocate disk space. Oh, disk may be fragmented. That's not my fault, folks.
It goes to skip. I can't find the media.
Let's start this one again.
We're going. This is going downhill fast.
Oh no! All right, cut.
Let's take a closer look. Yeah, and we'll show you. Wait for the fire truck, please. What's wrong with me? I'm a hardcore addict. For me, there's no turning back, and no reason to either. Just go right to the top quickly. Yeah, sorry. Digidesign, oh, sorry. Once more from the top.
Did you guys like that, or do I need to make changes? Okay, I'm going to do it once more from the top, same way. Their enthusiasm and eagerness to nudge me out of the way, grab my trackball, is frankly quite freaky, but in a Huckleberry Finn kind of way. Okay, that grabbing worked. Okay. Individual TDM flex cable connections. Sorry. So that's the. Okay, wait a second. And if nobody laughs, I'm completely cool here. Okay.
Wait.
And hello, Brutus. Come on now. The online indicator means. Okay.
It's just a moment of silence.
A moment of silence for my career in the infomercial business.
Okay.
Wasn't that like a really good serious vibe? Okay. Then goes to look at the core card. Okay, cool. It was like serious, but not too red. At 6:19 a.m. in the morning. Oh, right. At 6:19 a.m. in the morning, audio for tools is only done on Pro Tools.